Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'm going to be looking at two books by the same artist, Ana Galvan, I believe is how you would pronounce the name. This book, Afternoon at McBurgers, just came out, and since I wanted to talk about that, I'd figure I'd throw press enter to continue as well, because I got this earlier this year and really enjoyed the art. The stories in both they're weird. I would call it techno surrealism or like futuristic surrealism. They're very like these little nuggets out of someone's life. It feels like slice of life set in a future that you don't understand. So I don't think any of the stories really impact me in a way that I'll think about long term. But the art is so cool; it doesn't really matter to me. These are by Fantagraphics. The production's amazing. The colors are amazing. I don't know what printing process they're using. It almost looks like a risograph with some of the like grain that you get in those, but that doesn't look like the process. I don't know if they're using special inks or what, but it feels almost handmade. Really beautiful color combinations. This book is a collection of short stories. Press enter to continue. They seem to be linked together, and this is my take on what the book is. They're surreal, so it's more symbolic, and I think they're pretty open to interpretation. I don't think the artist has an interpretation. I think the artist wants it to be open to interpretation. So successful in that regard. Not my favorite type of storytelling, but I think the artist is doing what they want, which is what matters. So I get the sense in this book that people are existing in a virtual world, this metaverse that is coming. These seem to be emotional stories, worried, kind of giving like the vibe of worries about the future, not specific ideas about technology and how they could ruin us, but just like the emotional impact of technology, maybe. So I get the sense that this is like one person probably downloading into different avatars and living out these bizarre little chunks of realities, alternate realities, and then you like break back into pixels and you download into another avatar and you go be a member of a circus and get eaten by the doll lady there. This was my favorite one. The character, I'm assuming like the reader's entering the avatar of a woman who's in a job interview, and the job interview is weird. It's kind of like Brazil, Terry Gilliam's Brazil, where it's very corporate feeling but off. Like the corporate gets even more unsettling. And so she's calling out bullshit on some of the weird shenanigans going on in the interview, and they're like, "Congratulations, hey, you passed the test. All right, come back tomorrow, and you'll get to the next part of the selection process. Okay, thank you." So they're really short like that. This one actually has a pretty clear beginning and end, but also not really, because you don't ever see if she gets the job. You don't see what her life is like. You don't see what this company does. So I think that's the intention. When reality's unsettled by technology, everything just becomes these little blips of information, and that's the vibe. Me personally, I'd like to know more, but I think that's the intention. It's just when I don't know more, the stories don't stick. This is the only one that stuck. This is the reason I bought the book. I think I saw this in Fantagraphics Now or some other Best American Comics or some collection like that. Really love the art. It has a vibe. I associate this with Dash Shaw, like these kind of these color patches that move outside of the panels and stuff. And then another artist, I think his name's Oliver Schwarnen, did a book about his grandfather with the first name that I think it's his grandfather's. I think the artist is Oliver Schwarnen, and there's a book called Arnisi Schwarnen or something. I don't know how to pronounce it, but the guy that did that book kind of reminds me of that art mixed with like a Dash Saw vibe, and then these like fluorescent colors that I'm seeing a lot of that I really like, and the risograph vibe that I'm seeing a lot of. So that's this one. The interview story being the most impactful one, and then just the overall gist of the book is interesting. But it's not something that I would spend a lot of time thinking about, but it is something I would come back to and flip through just for the beautiful art. Afternoon at McBurgers is the same kind of visual language. It leans even more in my mind into this looks like if I'm getting the name right, the Oliver Schwarnen art. still with those color palettes and everything. This one is one connected story. It has a time travel aspect to it, and like in the beginning and end of the book, you have what the characters look like in their youth and in their old age. I don't know, like, you don't really get to know the characters, and I think that's the flaw in this book. It's too short for me to start to care about the characters, basically. But you get this weird intro scene where the woman hands this young girl some mysterious object and says, "Don't ever lose it." And then you get a couple other random scenes that kind of set up the characters and what they're doing. And then you follow these three young girls. This girl's obviously being abused by a parent. You follow these three young girls to a party at McBurgers. And at McBurgers, they meet a bully girl, or at least someone that they don't like. And then they get selected. If you get, one of them doesn't, but if you get selected, you get to go to this like time machine room, I guess, where, and you see what I'm talking about. It's like technological surrealism. I don't think this is technology that the authors actually, it's not like speculative sci-fi where you think this technology is actually happening. You're doing it to land some poetic emotional point. But you go into this room and you're presented with three scenes from your future, or three possible futures, or I don't know, none of it's explained. And they select one and they go into it. You can see this is the girl going to meet she's going to go meet the woman that gives her something. And one of the other girls goes and picks one of these three scenes, and the friend and the mean girl are left outside. And I don't know, it kind of wraps up that way. I think if I went back and read this one or two more times and like bothered to piece together the images from here to what's going on in the beginning of the book, I might be able to close the loop on the narrative. Like, I do believe it is a complete narrative, but I don't care enough about the characters. Even the fact that there needs to be like this kind of guide to lead me through it, I think shows that the artist had the instinct that she didn't spend enough time with the characters. They're really empty. There's like, okay, well, she's got a bruise on her arm, and that's like a hint at something. But for me to go solve the mystery of the loop of this book, I would need to care about the characters more. I would need to spend more time with them in their lives, and I think the world would need to be more expanded. So I think the short form stories in Please or Press Enter to Continue maybe fit Ana Galvan better. Like, I think that sense of like a quick emotional nugget of just like a stolen moment out of a weird future works better. When that stolen moment starts to get to be its whole own book, it feels like a third of an experience or a quarter of an experience or something. Whereas when it's stitched together in these like, well, you're just jumping from reality to reality, then that makes more sense. So I think like what she's after in terms of the vibes definitely comes through in this as well. But for my preference as a reader, I found this just too short or too emotionally empty for a book that seemed to only be making, like, the only thing I could see as its goal is to be making a kind of emotional point. I don't even think there's a metaphoric point to be made here. It's just something about holding on to who you are as you get older, which, like, I get it, but I don't feel it in the way I think like a book like this should. So I find that a little lacking. But again, I would absolutely recommend both books just in terms of like beautiful objects, super well produced things to have on your shelf, beautiful colors, art. I think there's a lot that I'll probably wind up stealing from this trend in comics that I'm seeing with these colors, and there's tricks I want to try. So I really appreciate these books for those reasons. All right, thanks for joining along. Take it away, Jack.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.